Today we're going to be talking about the arousal curve and reactivity in dogs. Reactivity is a behavior that can show up when a dog has any extreme display of any emotion, whether it's happiness, excitement, fear, nervousness, or anxiety. With this being said, every dog displays some level of reactivity, whether it's just like overly intrusive, cute, fluffy doodle to actual fear, aggression, reactivity, and biting behaviors. When we as owners actually accept the reality and truth of the fact that every dog has some type of reactivity, we can truly then learn to understand it, control it, and manage it appropriately. When a dog becomes reactive, it can lead to over-arousal, impulse control issues, and even aggression. Understanding the arousal curve is key to recognizing and managing these reactions before they escalate.
Exactly. And so I want you to think about your dog's behavior and emotional state kind of like a graph. Like there's a baseline or neutral state, and then as your dog's emotions get stronger, that graph, the emotions start to go up. And then when your dog calms down, the graph comes back down towards your baseline. So when everything is calm, the dog is at their neutral baseline, which is just flatlining, meaning there's no external trigger to get them excited, fearful, anxious, or any other emotional extreme.
Now imagine you're at home and everything is super peaceful. Your dog is in their neutral state, maybe resting or taking a nap. Then suddenly the doorbell rings. In that instance, your dog's behavior can spike. They may rush to the door, start barking, and appear on high alert. This is an example of a very quick climb of the arousal curve. The unexpected stimulus of the doorbell has triggered an emotional response, sending the dog straight to peak arousal. This can lead to extreme reactions like barking, lunging, or even growling.
And reactivity doesn't always happen suddenly. Like sometimes the rise in arousal is more gradual. And so for example, you're doing a neighborhood walk and your dog starts out calm, you're doing everything right, they're in the follow and they're walking by your side with no major distractions. And then all of a sudden, a block down, you see a neighbor with their dog come around the corner and your dog starts to key up on it as the distance between you and that other dog closes, and you'll start to notice that your dog's body language might change. They might start to get a little bit more intense, their focus is sharpening, their posture becomes more rigid. And so this is like that gradual climb up the arousal curve. But eventually, if the trigger, like that other dog, gets too close, now we're way up on the arousal curve and we have the reactive episode like jumping, barking, lunging, or depending on your dog and their emotional state.
This brings us to the 4 steps of the arousal curve that every dog will go through from being neutral to full-blown reactivity. These steps are the 4 L's: look, lock, load, then lunge. The first L, look, is when the dog spots the trigger, whether it's another dog, a person, or a vehicle. Lock, this is when the dog's focus becomes super fixated on the trigger, their body language becomes more intense, and they start to prepare for action. The third L, load, is when the dog gets more aroused. You'll see them physically tense up, often with a raised tail, stiff posture, or other signs of distress. They're getting ready to react in some way. The last L is that final just peak reactive episode, which is the lunge. This is when the behavior reaches its peak. The dog might bark, lunge, jump, or display aggression depending on their emotional state.
Yeah, and not all dogs are going to move through these steps at the same pace. Some dogs may go from looking to lunging super quickly, and others may take a little bit more time to escalate. But the important part is that you have to be aware of your dog's body language, and the context of the situation is also really key. So by understanding the signs that your dog is showing you in that specific moment, it allows us to intervene early before the behavior reaches that lunge stage.
The goal is to interrupt the climb of the arousal curve as early as you possibly can, ideally before the dog gets to the peak of the curve and becomes reactive. If we can step in early through the use of obedience or redirection, we can shut down the arousal process before it spirals out of control.
For example, if your dog starts to look or lock onto a trigger, like that's the moment we want you to intervene, and you can use obedience commands like sit, place, down, follow, the recall to break that focus from the trigger and redirect your dog's attention. And so by stepping in at these earlier stages, we can escalate our procedures and get them to come back to their baseline before they get way up here. And so the higher they are on their arousal curve, the more intense corrections and guidance we're going to have to give that dog, the more intense input we're going to have to give them to get them back to their baseline. So if you see it starting and let's not do that, we can end it very quickly and easily versus letting it get to the point where we have a full-blown reactive fit and now we're trying to stop that through the use of like more intense force and other protocols. But to talk about how reactivity even begins, it's a concept called the negative feedback loop. And so this usually begins by bad interaction or by a learned behavior unbeknownst to us that we're teaching our dogs. So if they see a dog from 100 feet away one day and they are like, that dog makes me nervous for whatever reason, I don't like it, I am going to bark because my instincts are telling me to bark, my emotions are telling me to do that, and if I bark and that dog passes by me and goes on their way, or we go a different route, we just continued on our walk. But in the dog's mind, they think that barking or that specific behavior got them out of that situation that they were nervous about. And it might start after one dog comes and jumps on top of our dog, or if our dog were to get attacked, or something happens with that active socialization that makes your dog uncomfortable. They're going to show you that they're uncomfortable with it, and now barking at 100 feet gets the dog to go away. So they're like, light bulb, holy smokes, that worked. I'm going to do that now more intensely the next time I see that dog from even further away to get out of that situation. And soon we have that negative feedback loop where your dog learns that I react in that certain way, I'm super aggressive, or I show those, maybe not even aggressive, but those aggressive type behaviors. And that allows me to get out of that situation because my owner takes me away or that dog gets the heck out of there. But either way, I win. And so I'm resorting to that from now on.
Absolutely. All of this is just a really important concept to grasp. If we can catch the behavior early and interrupt it, we teach the dog that there's no need to escalate into a full-blown reaction. Over time, they'll learn that staying calm is truly the better option. Mm-hmm. Obedience is not just about following commands. It's actually about truly being able to use the functional obedience to manage emotional responses and prevent reactivity from taking over.
Yeah, and so to summarize, the arousal curve is how your dog's emotional state rises and falls. And reactivity occurs when the dog becomes overly aroused with any emotions, and that can lead to impulse control issues, so just happily jumping on someone, or even worst case, like aggressive cases. And so by understanding those 4 stages, again, look, lock, load, and lunge, you can recognize when your dog is beginning to escalate and then intervene before it reaches its peak. So the key is early intervention, using obedience and leadership to redirect your dog and prevent reactivity from taking over their brain.
The more you practice this, the more your dog will understand that reactive behaviors don't actually get the desired result. Instead, staying calm and focused leads to a better outcome, and that's how we help our dogs manage their emotions and maintain better control over their reactions.
Good luck, and we'll see you on the next video.